Hello everyone, it's Heather. I want to tell you something that I learned today, which was something new for me and may come up for some of you and might be something that you'd be interested to know about because it kind of proved to be a little bit of a problem for us, and I ended up spending quite a significant amount of time having to communicate with Delta Airlines to get it fixed. Okay, so recently, just this year, we reached silver medallion status with Delta. Now, silver medallion status is pretty cool. We've earned enough miles and spent enough money with Delta and everything and flown enough that we've gotten this higher status with Delta because we're pretty loyal to Delta. We like Delta a lot. And we were pretty excited to get that. One of the big perks for me is that we no longer have to pay for checked luggage, which is really nice. Another perk that we get with our silver medallion status is that we get to board the airplanes earlier. And another perk is that we're eligible for free upgrades. Okay, now this is something I didn't even know if this would ever even happen to us. Well, get this. On our very first flight that we're flying on, which we're taking tomorrow from Minneapolis to San Diego, since we earned silver medallion status, we got a free upgrade. Both Ben and I were upgraded from our seats in the main cabin to Delta Comfort Plus. I was pretty excited about this. I got the notification from the Delta app. We were at Mall of America. I was waiting in line to order food at the food court, and I got a notification on my phone first that it was time for me to check in for my flight, which you usually get, the day before your flight. Kind of thought to myself, okay, when we're done eating, I got to remember to do that. But then while I was still standing there in the line, I got another notification from Delta that said, you've been upgraded to Delta Comfort Plus. And I was like, oh, I actually kind of gasped in the line, and the lady looked at me, somebody else that was standing in the queue with me, and I said, I got a free upgrade on my flight. And she's like, oh, cool. Okay, so I was really excited. But then when I went to check my Delta Airlines app and look at my boarding pass, I saw that sure enough, I had a seat, I think I was in 11F, so a window seat in row 11, really nice. But I couldn't find Ben's boarding pass. And usually I just swipe through and all of us are together. All our boarding passes are one right after each other. And I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know if Ben got upgraded. And my first thought was, uh-oh, they upgraded me, but they didn't upgrade Ben, and he's still sitting back in coach, in main cabin. So
unfair.
Right? So that's what I was worried about. So, okay, well, we had to eat. I finished my order. We ate our food and everything. And then I started going through what the deal was. Okay, I'm not going to go through with you everything that I ended up having to do.
It was like 2 hours.
It was like 2 hours, yeah. Like most of the time we were at Mall of America, I kept having to stop and sit on a bench and deal with this. First, I tried figuring it out in the app, and I wasn't able to. Then I tried calling, but the hold time was 14 minutes, which actually wasn't too bad. And there is a special dedicated number that came up for me now because I'm silver medallion. I decided I didn't want to wait on hold. It gave me the option to message with a Delta rep, so like texting back and forth. So I did that. Okay, but that ended up being really a long process. It worked fine, but I kept having to flip back and forth between the texting and the app to get information, what was my confirmation number, what was my Delta Sky Miles number, what was Ben's confirmation number. And then I realized something. Part of the problem was Ben and I both got these tickets with miles. I got my ticket with my miles, and Ben's ticket was with his miles. So we actually were not on the same reservation. We were on two separate reservations with two separate confirmation numbers. Now, because I knew that if I had done that myself, that would be a problem, because they would have thought that Ben was an unaccompanied minor. So when I booked the tickets, I actually had called Delta and explained to them what I wanted to do. I wanted to buy a ticket for me and a ticket for Ben on the same flight, each using our miles, but we're traveling together. He's not an unaccompanied minor. They knew what I was talking about, and they did book it that way. But because we were each using our own miles, we were booked as two separate reservations. The first guy that I talked to told me what had happened. He said, this was messaging. He said, you were both upgraded. We each have silver medallion status. So all three of us now, me, Megan, and Ben, all each have our own silver medallion status with Delta. Because we've all traveled all the same places. We've all gotten as many miles. Ben and I, though, have now used some of her miles to buy these tickets to San Diego. So we have less now banked than Megan does. But here's a question. Do you earn miles on flights that you bought with miles? I can't find a definitive answer to that question. If anybody knows, will you tell me? So like on this flight to California and coming back, we bought the flight with miles, but are we also earning miles? I don't know. So I've wondered about that. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. But that's what I was going to say, because we're taking a couple trips without Megan now. So we're going to earn more without her. So anyway, but she's probably going to in the future with like study abroad and stuff like that, going to earn some miles that we're not going to earn. So we were both upgraded, and they're not sure about this. Delta couldn't tell. They said because you each have your own silver medallion status, you were each individually automatically upgraded. I was upgraded to 11F, which was a window, and Ben was upgraded to 12B, which is the middle seat. So that's no good. Ben would hate that. Number one, he didn't want to be next to strangers, much less two of them. He wanted to be with me, and he really does prefer to be on the window. But he did. He said it's more important for him to be next to me than it is to have the window, right? Yeah. So that was really upsetting for him. So then in my text conversation with the Delta rep, once he confirmed you were both upgraded, but these are your seats, we weren't in the same row, we weren't next to each other, we weren't across the aisle. We were on completely separate sides of the aisle. I was on the window and Ben was in the middle seat on the other side, a row back from me. And so I asked the guy, could you put us together? There were no seats together available in Delta Comfort Plus. So then I asked, could we still sit together, because we had seats together that I had booked originally in main cabin if I declined the upgrade. And he said, okay, I see. And I explained to him, I said, it's more important for us to be together than it is for us to get upgraded on this particular flight. And I said to the woman I spoke to on the phone later, I said, if it was one of my older kids, and do you agree with this, Ben? Yeah. If it was one of my older two kids who are both adults, and we were like that, and we got upgraded and we weren't sitting together, they'd both be like, sweet, I'll take the upgrade. I don't care if I'm next to mom. You know, so they would rather just get upgraded and they wouldn't mind sitting next to somebody else. They've both done that before. But for Ben, he wanted to be next to me. And honestly, I want to be next to him too. I want to see how he's doing and make sure he's having a good flight experience and he's okay and everything, and talk to him about what we see and all that stuff. So I don't want him sitting by himself away from me. He said there was no seats available in Delta Comfort Plus, and the original seats that we had in main cabin were gone. Originally, we were in 31 E and F, which was a window and a middle seat, and I was going to have Ben on the window and I was going to be on the middle seat, so there might be somebody next to me, but those were gone. And so he said, I can put you in 34 E and F, I think it was, or 34 A and B or something, one side or the other, which was 3 rows back from where we were originally. And I was like, And I said, are you sure that's still main cabin, or is that going into basic economy? And he checked and he said, no, that's still main cabin. And so then I asked, what is the last row of the plane? And he said, it's 39. So we still were 5 rows forward from the back of the plane, because I don't like to be all the way at the back of the plane either. That is the safest place, by the way. The back of the plane is the safest in case of a crash, but it is not necessarily the most pleasant place to sit, because it's usually the loudest, and it's also where all the crying babies tend to be, and it's also where little kids tend to sit, because it's the cheapest seats, and it's also sometimes very noisy from the engines and stuff. And so yeah, the smoothest ride is always going to be over the wing. So if you can be like in the center of the plane, that's going to be your smoothest. So if you have trouble with turbulence, that's where you want to be sitting. The nicest seats, of course, are in the front, but that's also the seats where you're most likely to perish in the case of a crash. So just so you know, you might have a nice flight, but you'll also have a quick death. Then he noticed as he was going through the process that, oh wait, I have 20, was it row 20? 20 E and F? Yeah. Or something like that, something in row 20. And again, I was like, are you sure that's main cabin? Because that's getting kind of close to the front now. And I wondered if they were like a higher tier, where you have to pay a little extra. And then he ran into a problem and he had to pass me off to somebody else. And I responded to her, and then like half an hour went by and she never responded. So then I called Delta again. And now the hold time was 19 minutes. And I'm in the mall, I'm walking around and stuff. And so this was difficult. But then it gave me the option, do you want us to call you back when it's your turn? So I said yes, turned my phone way up and held on to it so I'd know when she called me back. But I said to Ben, if we don't get this resolved pretty soon, I'm just about ready to hop on the light rail and go over to the airport and just talk to somebody in person at a Delta check-in counter. Because if you're not aware, the Mall of America is 2 stops on the light rail to the main Minneapolis terminal. It's 1 stop away from the Hubert Humphrey Terminal B or whatever. It takes 5 minutes to go over to the airport on the light rail. We could have just done that. But thankfully, Delta did call me back, and then the lady that I spoke to on the phone was very good. I explained the situation. She understood exactly what I was talking about right away. She checked into it, and she said, no, I see what the issue is. And then we talked about how to prevent this from happening in the future. Now, she just for this particular trip took that off. So our automatic, upgrade to a nicer seat, she took off for our return leg from San Diego back to Minneapolis too, so that the same thing wouldn't happen when we came home, because I wouldn't be able to deal with it coming home because I'm going to be on a cruise ship and won't necessarily even have access, be able to, I can't call with my phone. It'll be in airplane mode. She said, no problem. I'll just, take it off for this particular trip, because I can see in the app, there's a way that you can say you don't want free upgrades if they give them to you. Now, if it's just me traveling alone, or maybe on some other trips, I might want it. I was pretty excited about getting the free upgrade Delta Comfort Plus. I'm actually really sad that my first free upgrade and I don't get to do it. But I didn't want to be separated from Ben. So for this particular, it's not costing me anything. I'm not out any money or anything like that. So for this particular trip, it was better for us just to stay in the main cabin. But I wanted you to know this, because then she explained to me on the phone that because Ben had his own silver medallion status himself, they might have upgraded just him. He could have gotten a free upgrade, and I might not necessarily have gotten one. What I was fearful about in the beginning, that I got moved up and he didn't, it could have gone the other way. Ben could have gotten bumped up to Delta Comfort Plus, and I could have been stuck back in main cabin. But they did upgrade both of us, but we weren't sitting together. Now, here's the question Delta couldn't answer for me because they didn't know. I said, is the only reason that happened because we were on 2 separate reservations? And she said, that's a very good point. That might be why. She said, if you had been on a reservation together, they might not have upgraded you unless they had 2 seats together, because they would see that you were already booked with 2 seating together. So they might have seen, okay, we have a party of 2 that's eligible for an automatic upgrade, a free upgrade. Oh, we've got 2 seats available in Delta Plus, we can move them up to. But because we weren't on the same reservation, they're not sure. So be aware of that. There's not necessarily a guarantee when you get to these higher level statuses. And if anybody's a higher status than me, let me know how it works for you if you're traveling with a companion or a family. If there's several of you that are traveling and you have a higher level status with your airline, and they offer you a complimentary upgrade to better seating, do you all get moved together, or do you just individually get moved and there's no guarantee you're going to be sitting together in the nicer section? Let me know. So I just thought this was kind of an interesting thing that happened. This was new for us because this is the first time we've had this status. And I was so excited when it first happened that we got upgraded on our very first flight with silver medallion status, but we didn't get to use it on this particular time, but maybe in the future. So, but it might make a difference if we're on the same reservation together. That might have been the key thing. So I hope this makes sense to you. If you have any questions, or I really would appreciate your comments and your feedback on this situation down in the comments below, leave those for me. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video, everyone. Have a great day and safe travels.